Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome. The time is 11:01 a.m., Saturday, July 25th, 2020. I call this public hearing from the San Francisco MTA to order. My name is Hakem Ibrahim, and I'm a hearing officer for the City and County of San Francisco. I'll be facilitating this public meeting. I want everyone in attendance to know that audio and video from today's hearing is being recorded. Today's meeting is the first of two meetings to discuss the return of Muni Metro rail service. Today we'll be discussing the proposed improvements to the J Church line. If you are interested, next Friday, July 31st at noon, there'll be a second public meeting to discuss proposed improvements to the L Taraval and K Ingleside Metro lines. These public meetings would normally be conducted at City Hall, SFMTA headquarters, or a community center. But in the sign of the times, we're holding this meeting online. So I want to thank everyone for joining us either via video conferencing or audio conferencing. If you are joining us via video conferencing, you will be able to view the shared materials that will be presented today during the public hearing. However, if you'd like to make public comments, you still have to dial in using the following phone number. The 1-888-363-4734, then enter code 701-4320 #. Again, if you are joining us via the video conferencing service but would like to provide public comment, you will have to dial in. The dial-in information is on the screen now. Again, the number is 1-888-363-4734, and then you'll enter participant code 701-4320 #. Once I've opened the line for public comment, you'll dial 1, then 0 to be placed in the queue for public comment. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes to provide public comments. If you prefer to provide comments or feedback regarding today's meeting in writing, you can email your comments to tellmuni@sfmta.com. That email address will be monitored during the meeting today. The email is on the screen for those joining us via the video conferencing. For those listening, again, the email is tellmuni@sfmta.com. It's TELLMUNI@sfmta.com. Again, TELLMUNI@sfmta.com. Joining me today, are a number of SFMTA staff members. JP Streeter is a public relations officer with the MTA. JP helped plan and organize today's meeting, so I thank you for your role in making today's meeting happen. Presenting today will be Michael Rhodes. Michael is the project manager for the J Church Transfer Improvements Project. Also, members of the project team are joining us. Transportation planner Anna Harkman is here, as well as transportation engineer Darcy Alava. I'd also like to take a moment and thank members of our IT department who are providing support for today's meeting. At this time, let's see if we can move to the next slide. Before we get started, throughout the meeting, we will be conducting polling, instant polling, we'll be administering poll questions throughout today's meeting. And so right now is the time for our first poll question. So if you, again, are joining us via the video conferencing you see on the screen, there's 2 ways that you can respond to our poll questions. The first being you can enter the website pollev.com/SFMTA ride. That'll take you to a website and then just follow the prompts to answer our poll questions. Conversely, if you're listening or even if you're on Skype, you can text SFMTA RIDE to 22333 to join the poll question. So we're just going to pause here for a short while just to allow people to log in either way, either through the entering the website address pollev.com/SFMTA RIDE. Poll is POLL, so POLLEV.com/SFMTA RIDE. Or you can text, and that you would text SFMTA RIDE to 22333. For the moment, while we're getting some results for our first poll question, I'm going to open up the phone lines. I just wanted to make sure that everyone on the line can hear, and everyone, if you're joining us via Skype, you can see the slides. Just while these questions are being, the answers are being tabulated, I'm going to open the public line for comment. Please dial 10 only if you are having technical issues. Say you can't hear the presentation, or you can't see the slides, or even if you're having issues with the poll. We're not opening it up to public comment. Again, this is just, we want to make sure before we get into the presentation that everyone is ready to get started and is connected, depending on how you've joined the meeting today.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0. Each question will be asked in the order it was received.
So again, just opening it up, if you would like to, if you are having maybe technical issues or there's something wrong before we get started, I just wanted to confirm that everyone is connected, everyone can hear the presentation if you're on the phone, and see the presentation if you're joining us via Skype. So only dial 10 if you're having technical issues. Again, we do have IT staff joining us so that we can maybe resolve any of these issues.
You have 2 questions remaining.
First, this is Bob Planthold. The volume level is low. Secondly, those who are blind can't see any of this. And the poll assumes you have text capacity. Not everybody does have capacity or can do this, so the poll itself is going to be biased.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
You have 1 question remaining.
Yes, I'm looking at the on the calendar where it says J Church Transfer Improvements Project Public Hearing, and I click in that. Then I see a link that says Join Online to view shared materials. When I click on that, I'm getting Skype for Business all set. Your meeting will open in a new Skype for Business window. I'm not able to get anything beyond this. I did make sure that my ad blocker was off, so I just refreshed that, but I still am not able to see anything online. Any advice?
Let's see. Hold on 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I know in the past, if you just click on the link, it might not populate the exact address.
Okay.
You may want to, if you put your cursor over the link, and then maybe I think if you do a right click, you'll have the option to copy the link. If you maybe try copying and then pasting into your browser, that'll send over the full link. The only other thing is if it's telling you that we are the meeting has started, but
Tried
you're
that.
waiting.
I'm sorry, that did not work.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
And you said that it's telling you the meeting has started and you're waiting?
Well, we are using Skype for Business. Is that correct? That's
Yes.
okay. So so I didn't know that until I got here. So that's good to confirm. Thank you. And then I just see a screen that says all set. Your meeting will open in a new Skype for Business window. And that I cannot find any way to make that happen. And maybe I'm the only person with this technical problem. Maybe
Okay.
others are seeing the screen. I can try a different browser if I'm the only one. Or
Let me
I
give
can
you,
let
let me
someone else.
give you, I'll give you the exact address. Yeah, try,
Okay.
what browser are you using? Are you using Safari?
This is Google Chrome.
Chrome? Okay, yeah,
Google Chrome.
that should work. Let me give you the address, the actual address that I have for today's meeting. It's https://meet.sfmta.com/3TNQZKFJ.
Okay, I believe I heard that right before .sfmta. What was that? After the 2 slashes?
Meet, MEET.
Oh, meet.sfmta.com/meetings/3T like Thomas, N like Nancy, Q like Queen, Z like Zebra, K like King, S like Sarah, J like the J Church.
No, it's F as in Frank, then J as in J Church.
All right, let me give that a try. Thank you, everyone.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
It's David Pilpel. I just wanted to check that you can hear my public comment when we get there. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
You have 0 questions remaining.
So again, to the gentleman that was having issues viewing the slides, I do apologize if you cannot get connected. The presentation will be posted online after the meeting is concluded, so you can come back and see all the slides and see the presentation itself again, because we are offering to participate in today's meeting via Skype and telephone. So hopefully it did work for you, but if not, again, there will be an opportunity to view the meeting at a later date, okay? So thank you again, everyone. It looks like everyone else is able to follow. We will move on. And I will now turn it over to Michael, who will begin the presentation.
Thank you, Hakim, and good morning to everyone who is joining us today. I'm Michael Rhodes, the project manager for the J-Church Transfer Improvements. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our city's transportation system. The economic hardship that COVID-19 has caused and will continue to cause is severe. And while this has created many new and unprecedented challenges for transportation, we as an agency at the MTA are also rising to meet those challenges with new approaches and focusing on new ways to improve efficiency and reliability as we bring public transportation back to San Francisco. We know transportation is a vital part of our overall economic recovery in the city, and it's important that we make it work better within the deep constraints that we face moving forward right now. As the city gradually reopens for business, the Muni rail system needs to be restored to support increased movement, essential workers, and economic activity. This means improving reliability and efficiency so that our customers aren't stuck on trains that cannot move through the subway tunnel or on buses that cannot move through traffic. I'm sure most of you remember what the subway was like before the pandemic. As the photos on the screen illustrate, there were long waits for the J to get into the tunnel at Duboce, crowded trains creeping through the tunnel or sitting between stations for minutes, customers waiting on platforms for a long period of time in crowded conditions due to delays. Not to mention long gaps on the J Church itself, with one train showing up jam-packed after a long wait, followed right behind by the next train showing up empty. So very inefficient, frustrating for riders, but also really crowding people onto trains unnecessarily. We want to really minimize how long people are on trains right now in order to minimize potential exposure to COVID-19. And we want customers to be able to rely on Muni to get them to their jobs on time, especially essential workers who rely on Muni and don't have another choice right now. This is vital to the city's economic recovery, to public health, and to our ability to prevent a catastrophic surge on our roads from increased automobile use if our transit system is not working or if people are not comfortable using it. One of the reasons the Muni Metro subway has historically not performed well compared to a lot of other subway systems is because we're trying to run more trains per hour than is really possible through a single tunnel. And it's well above what other peer systems around the country run. You'll see on this chart here that Muni is scheduled to run 42 trains per hour in the peak period. In actuality, we're really only able to run about 34 to 40 trains because it's just really not possible to turn that many trains around at the end in that short of a period of time. BART, by comparison, only turns around 22 trains. The New York City subway with their old train control system only does 10. They think they can get up to 38 eventually with a new train control system, but just for reference, we're turning around a much higher number than, or trying to turn around a much higher number than is really generally recommended. And we are making upgrades to our train control technology to increase our efficiency. But the reality is that if we want to significantly reduce subway congestion and long wait times, the only real solution that will fully solve this is to run fewer but longer trains through the subway. So instead of kind of one-car trains, we want to get to two-car and even three-car trains operating in the tunnel. To accomplish this, as we bring back rail service in August, we will be making the J Church, K Ingleside, and L Taraval surface-only lines on a temporary basis as part of the COVID-19 emergency response. This slide shows the new rail service plan that will go along with these changes, and you'll see that the J operates from Balboa Park Station to Church and Market under this plan, and terminates at Church and Market, turning around there instead of entering the subway to go downtown as it did previously. Customers heading downtown can transfer to the Muni Metro subway at Church and Market Station. The goal of that is to keep trains moving again in the subway to minimize health risks to riders and operators from the kind of congestion that we previously experienced, and to really improve service reliability. At the same time, this is part of a broader kind of set of temporary changes that also includes the L Taraval and K Ingleside surface lines being combined into a single line referred to as the LK. So Taraval and Ocean Avenue would have kind of one single interlined system line that would connect at West Portal Station for transfers downtown. The T line and the M Ocean View lines will be interlined, so kind of run together as a single line as well. They'll follow their usual routes. They'll still go into the subway because they are two-car trains and provide that extra capacity, but they'll just be combined as a sort of longer version of themselves. And we're also introducing S shuttle service. So that's the shuttle from West Portal Station to the Embarcadero, which will run kind of all day, providing additional service and capacity in the subway, initially with two-car trains, but we're currently in safety testing for three-car trains, which is something we haven't run in general in the past, so that will increase our subway capacity. As a result of these changes, we expect customers will experience more reliable and efficient service with far fewer delays along each leg of their trip, improving travel time and reliability for the entire rail system, and allowing us to turn trains around and back into service faster, because we're not trying to turn as many trains around in the subway now. While customers on the J will need to transfer for service downtown, they will not experience the chronic delays that used to impact that route, making their trip a lot more reliable overall. And we expect that we may be able to run the J more frequently on the surface as well. So we think that compared to the sort of past frequency you might have seen on the J, we should actually be able to run more frequently because we're not stuck in congestion as much. So that's actually, we'll show up to a rider on the street as more frequent service. So in order to make the J Church a surface-only route, we need to provide a way for trains to turn around, firstly, at Church and Market, and we need to provide accessible onboarding and offboarding at Market and Church Streets so that the J can head back outbound when customers are transferring to and from the subway. The project scope for the J Church transfer improvements is proposed to include temporary upgrades to pedestrian infrastructure on Church Street between 15th Street and Duboce, as well as potential outdoor dining space on Church Street that could be made possible because of some of the changes we're proposing on Church. The goals are to ensure a seamless transfer, especially for people with disabilities at Church and Market Street, because we are asking people to transfer. We want to make sure that that's a transfer that can be done for somebody with a disability seamlessly without needing to walk an excessive distance. We also want to support local businesses on this corridor with outdoor dining space, increased foot traffic from more people transferring to and from the trains, reliable transit service to the corridor, and efficient commercial loading options. So the graphic on this slide represents the temporary changes that are currently proposed for implementation in August as the first part of this project. In August, J Church rail service will resume with a temporary combined inbound and outbound terminal on Church Street just south of Market Street at that existing boarding island. Trains will turn around and head south after serving this stop. This design uses the existing boarding island and accessible platform on the east side of Church Street next to Il Casaro and the Pilsner Inn, if you can picture that boarding island right there, just south of Market Street. So during this phase, vehicle traffic would be restricted on this block of Church Street. Only commercial vehicles and transit would be allowed, as well as access for emergency vehicles, paratransit, and local access for residents on the block. So people who live on this block can still access their driveway or pull up to their front door if they need, to make some sort of drop off at their own house. Vehicles traveling northbound on Church Street would generally, if they're needing to travel north farther beyond Market Street, coming from the south, would likely turn at 17th Street and then right onto Sanchez in order to continue north. By reducing the amount of traffic on the block, we intend to provide more space for transit riders to have social distancing at the stop and to reduce traffic conflicts while transferring, as well as with trains switching back. So at that boarding island that's just south of Market Street right now, which is going to be kind of our first and last stop now for the J during this temporary period, there's going to be a lot of people waiting to get on the train and a lot of people getting off the train, because if a train will show up, everyone will get off, everyone will get on. The existing boarding platform is only 6 or 7 feet wide, so we really need to give some additional space in that what right now is the curb lane for people to kind of spill over and have more room to socially distance and to safely wait for and get off of the train. We're particularly aware of pedestrian concerns around this project and accessibility concerns, and we're working to really very intentionally to reduce the conflicts between vehicle traffic, pedestrians coming off the train, and transit riders boarding or lighting the train, and just pedestrians in general. So you'll have a lot of people coming from that platform trying to get to Church Street Station, which is to the which they'll have to cross Church to the west to get to. So we want to make that crossing as safe as possible by by essentially eliminating vehicle traffic during that period. And the second phase is shown on this graphic. These are, again, temporary changes planned for implementation in late fall. In fall, we plan to build new temporary accessible platforms, so wheelchair accessible platforms on Church Street, just south of Duboce, which would actually sit on the existing inbound boarding island there, just south of Duboce Avenue, and at a new outbound stop on Church Street, just south of Market. So,
Michael, sorry to interrupt you. We've lost the conference bridge, so anyone who was joining us on the phone cannot hear you. Let me just reestablish it before you continue, okay? Thank you. Okay, if our IT staff is on the line, can you just confirm that the bridge has been reestablished? Okay, so thank you again, everyone, for thank you again for just bearing with us. We're just confirming that the guests who are joining us via audio conference can hear the meeting. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Michael, please continue. We are back on.
All right, thank you again. So I'll start from the top of this slide again, in case people may have missed part of it. So the graphic on this slide represents the temporary changes planned for implementation in fall as the second phase of this project. In fall, we plan to build a new temporary accessible platform, wheelchair accessible platform on Church Street, just south of Duboce Avenue, on the existing, really resting on the existing inbound island there, as well as at a new outbound stop on Church Street, just south of Market Street, next to Verve Coffee. This new temporary stop would extend the sidewalk on Church Street next to Verve Coffee to provide a seamless transfer to the train from Church Street Station. This will allow us to extend J-Church service to Duboce Avenue in order to provide an accessible connection to the N Judah, which is a second option for getting to and from downtown. And it also provides a closer connection to the Safeway grocery store. This will also improve connections from the subway to the outbound J-Church by creating that stop right by Verve Coffee, and reduce the potential for crowding at stops by increasing the amount of space that people have to wait. We will be evaluating in the second phase whether the northbound lane still needs to be closed on Church Street between 15th and Market in this phase. We'll be working in close collaboration with merchants in the corridor, with residents, and with transit riders to understand if there's still a need to have that northbound lane closed to create additional space. It may be that that's not necessary as part of the second phase of this project, because there won't be as many people waiting at that platform. You'll note here that there's a change to the access to the Safeway parking lot. Currently, there's a left turn if you're heading southbound on Church. Just south of Duboce, there's a left turn from the sort of center track lane into a Safeway parking lot entrance. That would be relocated a little bit farther south down the block to a southern entrance to the Safeway. And to do that, we'll need to change the striping in the track lane. So we'll get rid of the red transit-only lane designation there and restripe it to make it clearer that people need to enter there to make a left turn into the Safeway parking lot. So on the next slide here, we can see this is an example of what a temporary ADA compliant wheelchair accessible platform looks like. This is one that was taken as part of a construction project. So this is what would be built at that stop just south of Duboce, as well as at Market Street near Aquitaine, just south of Market. So this is made out of wood. It's temporary. It sits on top of the road bed. It's not sort of a permanent fixture. And in reducing the amount of traffic on Church Street between 15th and Market, we think there's an opportunity to activate the street with outdoor dining and other merchant services, potentially creating a new vibrant pedestrian and transit plaza. This photo shows outdoor dining on Valencia Street, which was just opened for outdoor dining and other retail recently, I think last week as well. So you can see that there's actually, they've taken over parts of the, not only the parking lane, but also the travel lane there for outdoor dining on a temporary basis to allow merchants to have more space for that activity. And you know, right now Church Street has very narrow sidewalks, so in general merchants are not able to do sidewalk dining by and large on Church Street. There's just not enough room to have that and have pedestrians safely circulate through. But this project sort of opens up some space So the diagram here shows the locations where temporary outdoor dining or other retail could occur on the block between 15th and Market Streets of Church. The new pedestrian zones are for transit riders, waiting for the train. Those are shown in gray, sort of a dark gray color at near Aquitaine Verve Coffee on Church, and then near the Pilsner Inn and at Il Cosaro on the east side of Church. So those are shown in dark gray, and then the potential dining zones are shown in yellow. And some potential locations for outdoor dining, kind of include the parking lane on either side of the street, as well as portions of the outer travel lanes next to the parking lane, because those will no longer be open to general traffic. There's space there that could be used for either a part-time or even full-time outdoor dining location. We're also proposing loading solutions for both commercial vehicles and on-demand delivery services, so kind of like restaurants having deliveries to their customers. So commercial deliveries can be made to businesses on the street using newly established commercial loading zones, or yellow zones, on the southern half of the block on both sides, east and west. Vehicles with commercial plates are permitted to enter or exit the block anytime using the track lane. They would just go in the center lane to access this block. To enable the pickup and delivery services that many restaurants are currently relying on to stay afloat, we are proposing 3 new green zones, which would be located at each of the corners of the block, kind of on 15th and Market Street. So basically at the 4 corners of the block, right at the edge of this block, we would have a green zone, 15-minute short-term parking where somebody could pull over, run in, pick up their delivery, whether it's for themselves or whether they're making that delivery as part of a service, and get on their way. So these would allow drivers picking up the food, again, find short-term parking, be there for a couple minutes, run into a restaurant and church, and get going. We want to work with merchants. We are working with merchants on this corridor to identify the street spaces and times of day that would work best to designate specific areas for either loading or dining, because there's sort of flexibility to how we use that space. And we're going to monitor how commercial and on-demand pickup and delivery are operating once these changes were to go into effect after project implementation, and continuing working with merchants to really identify any changes that need to be made to this temporary configuration. So this slide shows sort of a basic photo rendering of where the potential temporary dining area could be located on the east side of Church, next to the boarding island, the existing boarding island. This space would be closed to traffic at all times and could be used on a temporary basis during this phase, and could be used for dining during much of the day. So you can see there's the dark gray zone next to the front of the boarding island, which is where we would kind of expect more people to be waiting for the train in a way where they're trying to have social distancing and spread out. And then in the sort of forefront of the picture, there's that sort of tan colored potential dining zone, which is where it's next to the wheelchair accessible portion of the stop, so people won't be walking across there to access the stop. So it creates a zone of about 11 or 12 feet wide that could be used for outdoor dining. And the next slide here shows where the potential dining area could be located on the west side of Church Street. So for this space, we're working with merchants to identify, again, the right mix of hours for dining versus commercial loading use. And to sort of describe what you're seeing here, again, there's this pedestrian zone, which is where, which will sort of help shorten the crossing distance and ensure that when pedestrians are crossing the street, they're not encountering oncoming traffic. But at the same time, there's an opportunity there for potential dining further down the block, as well as in a little bit of the space between the pedestrian zone and the sidewalk, because we have about 20 feet of width there between the track lane and the edge of the sidewalk. So we're able to allocate about 5 or 6 feet for outdoor dining, and then sort of a clear space, and then space for people to cross the street to get to the Church Street station. And actually going back to that slide for a moment, the phase 1 of this project, there won't be any sort of infrastructure in the pedestrian zone. It'll just be a place for pedestrians to cross to not have to encounter traffic as they get to the station, because we're dropping off an entire train worth of people all at once who will need to cross the street. In phase 2, that's where the ADA accessible, wheelchair accessible ramp would be, as well as the waiting zone for the new outbound stop that we would create there as part of the temporary changes. Finally, I want to really emphasize that all of what I outlined would be temporary during the health crisis. We're going to be conducting a full evaluation of this project before considering whether any part of it should be continued on a more permanent basis, including the J Church transfer improvements and any of the outdoor dining components. A key aspect of the evaluation is going to be community outreach, and we welcome your feedback on how to evaluate as well, what we should be looking at, what we should be tracking. This will also help us make adjustments to phase 1 and 2 of the project, even before, even not thinking about any longer term changes, but just in terms of immediate changes to make sure things are working real time, and determine again what a more permanent project could look like in the area. Because again, this is what changes we're able to make in a short period of time to accommodate transfers, but it's very likely that in a longer period, if the J were to stay out of the tunnel, that there are probably slightly more involved infrastructure changes that might work better for everyone. But this is again about the temporary phase of the project. So we really want to know from you as we evaluate which metrics are most important to look at. The project team has been conducting outreach with Church Street merchants on this corridor, community-based organizations, the accessibility and mobility impaired community, and other neighborhood stakeholders. The goal of this outreach really is to inform the community about the proposed project, involve them in the design details, and understand local concerns from residents, merchants, and transit riders. Today, of course, we're holding a virtual community meeting and public hearing to review the proposed temporary changes. And after this hearing, the city traffic engineer will review and ultimately make a decision as to whether to approve these temporary changes. And then we would move forward, if approved, with implementation and testing of the phase 1 changes in advance of these August service changes on the J Church. Once rail service does resume, will be again an ongoing process of monitoring and evaluation of the project to determine if any further adjustments need to be made immediately. And then in fall, we'll be proceeding with implementing phase 2 if approved, and continue to monitor and evaluate changes, adjustments during that temporary phase as well. Again, the project's temporary, but we are looking at what the best long-term solutions would be. So that will be part of the evaluation process. Thank you again to everyone for joining us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hakem, who will help explain how members of the public can give feedback and ask questions about the project.
Michael, thank you. Excellent presentation. So as we stated, or as Michael stated, these are planned improvements. The reason we are here today is to find out what the public's feedback is or input is on these proposed changes. So again, if you are joining us late, I mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, if you've been on the call, the Skype video call, and you'd like to provide public comment, you do need to call in. The phone number now is on the screen. It's 1-888-363-4734. You will enter code 701-4320, then pound to enter the call. The queue is open for public comment. And so once you're on the call, you'll dial 1 then 0 to join the queue. We'll give each participant 2 minutes for public comments. You're free to speak in support or opposition of the proposals, or if you have questions, we will take all those questions, and then again, staff is remaining on the call to answer those questions at the end of the public comment period. So feel free, again, now is the time if you'd like to provide public comment. If you are on the phone, just dial 1 then 0, you'll be queued up. And again, I'll be giving everyone 2 minutes to provide public comment. If you would like to provide public comment via email, you also have the opportunity to do that. The email address to submit questions is tellmuni@sfmta.com. Again, TELLMUNI muni@sfmta.com. So with that said, I will go to the phone lines now, and we will start. If you can, please state your name, and then once you state your name, your 2 minutes will start.
You will be notified when the speaker is ready for your question. To withdraw your question, press 1, then 0. Your question has been withdrawn. To alert the speaker that you have a question, press 1, then 0. You may now resume the question and answer session.
Okay, so that message meant that we were not in question and answer period. I apologize. It may have been turned off when we lost the bridge, but it is now back in question and answer mode. So if you are waiting to provide public comment, now is the time to dial 1, then 0.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, this is David Pilpel. I have some written comments that I've prepared. I don't have email, so I don't have a way to get them to you by email. I'm willing to do a file drop to somewhere, or if you open the chat box, I am willing to drop the comments by text into the chat box. If those don't work, I can read them quickly, but it'll probably take more like 4 minutes rather than 2. So you tell me how you want me to participate.
Yeah, I mean,
and by the way, thank you to you and to staff.
Thank you, David. Unfortunately, we are just allowing 2 minutes. So I don't know if you want to summarize your comments. You certainly can after the meeting provide them, as you said, like a file transfer, whatever suggestion you have. I can also, let's see.
I'm happy to wait till the end if there are others who...
Well, hold on 1 second, David. You can also call
Sure.
JP directly. He's monitoring the email line, but he's offered to, you can call him directly on his work number. I can give you that now if you want to provide additional comments, maybe after the meeting, or as an aside.
Okay. I want to be sure that my comments are on the record. I'm certainly willing to talk to the JP, who I understand is the PIO on this, but I need my comments to be on the record. I'm happy to read through them quickly, and I would like an opportunity to provide them at length. It's only 1 page to staff to review. I'm willing to defer if others want to make quick comments and speak at the end so as not to delay others, but I really do need these comments to be on the record.
Okay, so I will give
you want me to just start now?
No, I will give you JP's phone number, and you can provide him with your comments, and they will be on the record. Okay.
The 5 questions remaining.
The telephone number, if you're listening, David, is 415-646-2109. Again, 415-646-2109. Next speaker, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Simone Manganelli, pronouns he, him. I'm a frequent Muni rider, and I'm a District 8 resident. And I'm calling just to support these changes on Church Street. I really encouraged to see that SFMTA is actually looking at ways to reconfigure the streets. And actually, I don't think this proposal goes far enough. I think it's a good start on the proposal south of Market. I think it would be good to close off the part north of Market and right next to Spaceway to all car traffic as well. I know that's a little challenging with the Safeway entrance, but I think there are some restaurants there that could also benefit from increased foot traffic and closing off the streets and having outdoor dining. And so I encourage SFMDA to figure out a way to do it there. And maybe that involves, adding things to allow people to get their groceries more easily other than by car. And so maybe that involves getting electric bike stations right next to Safeway, including carriers, so people can carry their groceries on their bikes, stuff like that. The more we can get cars off the streets, the better. We're already back up at like 75% of our traffic capacity after COVID, even though the pandemic is still around. So I would encourage SFMTA to continue to think a little bit more flexibly and continue to close off more of those streets to cars. And as I said, I'm a resident in the area, so I would much appreciate that. I get my groceries by walking, and I would appreciate it if there was a way to get it better by bike. That would be great. So yeah, that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You have 4 questions remaining.
This is Bob Planthold. I'm a senior with a lifelong disability. I live on this J Church corridor. I adamantly oppose this. It's a construction boondoggle not meant really to help the disabled, and some of the proposals are going to cause problems. I spent a long time with Sean Kennedy earlier this week. The public needs to realize this project was first proposed by Jeffrey Tumlin in November of 2019, long before COVID came up, long before he actually assumed office. He put forth in a neighborhood blog the idea of stopping the J at Church and Market. The problems for the accessible are that with this idea of a south side accessible platform, even if you say it's temporary during COVID, ADA and federal regs say once you provide access, you cannot take it away. That means whether or not there's a northbound Church and Duboce access platform built, the south one can't be taken away. There's also safety problems when you talk of dining in the street. How are you going to ensure that motorcyclists, motor scooters, and others don't weave in and out along that street for diners or for people with disabilities getting on and off either of the ramped platforms on the south side of Market? It would be just much easier to build an accessible platform on the Church and Duboce side at that. That makes it much easier because as it is now, transfers from other Muni lines like the 37, if it gets restored, the 22 are going to be cumbersome to both sides of any new J that stops at Church and Market. But again, this is not due to COVID. This is Jeff Tumlin's idea from November of 2019 that's now gotten political cover for an idea that really seems more to help merchants with their financial capacity appropriate.
Your 2 minutes is up. If you want, I'll allow you to just finish your thought, please, your last thought.
I'll send emails more.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
You have 4 questions remaining.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Ty Fashion. I am the owner of 240 to 250 Church Street. First of all, I want to tell from the technology perspective that no one was able to log on to the business part of the application on Skype. And the online version, there was no presentation, so I don't think that anyone has seen the presentation, and obviously the folks on the phone were not able to see it. The other thing that I wanted to specify that there was no outreach to the property owners at all. I did not receive anything by mail. I'm assuming that no one else has either. I think that the closure of this block of Church Street is disastrous. Not only does it not make sense from the traffic flow perspective, but if we're putting a handicap ramp on the south part of Market on Church Street, where the elevator for handicap accessibility from Muni is on the northwest side, across the street, that means that folks who are handicapped, who need to use the elevator, who are pushing strollers, anyone other than those who are able to walk, is going to be forced to cross 2 streets, one of them being Market Street, which is a very heavily trafficked road. I'm very, very fearful of this temporary situation. I'm very fearful to become permanent, and I think that would be devastating to both property owners who live there and business owners who preside their businesses over there. Outdoor dining is great. We can do that on a parklet. We can do the handicap ramp like the previous individual stated on the northwest side of Church, north of Market. There's an existing platform over there. That is the place that makes more sense. I do not wish this to be a long-term solution. I am very fearful that it will be.
Sir, your 2 minutes is up, but I will allow you, if you have one last comment or to finalize your thought, please.
That's all I have. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, sir.
You have 5 questions remaining.
Hi, excuse me. My name is Mark Norton. I want to agree with the comments that Mr. Planthold made about how inconvenient and worse this will be for disabled people, but it'll also be extremely difficult for seniors in general, for families with kids, for people with packages who are shopping at Safeway or elsewhere, for people who are coming or going late at night or early in the morning. The proposal, in a word, I think is idiotic. Let me say that I have a question, and I hope I'll get an answer, which is, have you guys considered using buses on this line, or at least parts of this line, so people don't have to transfer? That's my comments and my question.
All right. Thank you, sir.
You have 4 questions remaining.
Hi, my name is Sam Deutsch. I live in D8, and I often commute via the J Church Muni, and I'm just calling it in support of the proposed changes. I think that typically, the previous iteration of the J Church very often was stuck for extended periods of delays in the portal, and this proposed change will reduce that, and also closing that section of church to cars I also think is a great idea, because very often it would be stuck behind cars, which didn't make a lot of sense. And my comment in addition is that I think we should extend the red lanes and provide priority for Muni all the way down Church Street, because I also think it's kind of ridiculous that when you're on the J, you can be stuck at a stop sign waiting behind a car with one person on it, while the train has 100 people on it. That just purely from an equity and an efficiency standpoint doesn't make a lot of sense. And furthermore, it'll allow the train to run more efficiently, which will allow increased service, lower headways, and fewer drivers to maintain the same level of service if the trains can get to where they're going faster. And so I guess my comment on the whole is that we should be, if anything, providing more spaces where the J gets priority and can go faster rather than being stuck behind a car with one person in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Speaker, are you on the line? Maybe you have your phone on mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Justin Zucker from Reuben Junius and Rose on behalf of Safeway. First, I want to thank you all at MTA for hosting this hearing. It's been very informative. As mentioned in our letter submitted for the record yesterday, we had some uncertainty as to what the proposed project scope is, and we still have some concerns. I'll be brief since we've outlined our concerns in our letter. While we are supportive of the city taking action to respond to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the need to be nimble when responding, it seems that this project is being rushed through without adequate consideration of the issues. Safeway was only recently notified of this less than 2 weeks ago. It appears that this could be done in a one-stage, not two-stage process, that keeping the Jade Church's first outbound and last inbound stop at the location proposed in the first stage is safer and more efficient, and that other measures are available for pedestrian safety aside from closing down Church Street. Limiting this project to a one-stage seems would be more efficient on several fronts, including system-wide efficiency and from keeping the J Church from crossing Market Street 2 times to turn around. Safety for individuals having to relearn how to navigate 2 times how to access the area, It would also, at that location, as proposed in the first stage, would be the most direct path of access to the church station, approximately 70 feet in a crosswalk versus up to 875 feet from Duboce Church, crossing multiple streets as mentioned. And to that point, it would seem that having the inbound route closest to the church station entrance would be more important than the outbound for folks traveling downtown to get to work. And it seems that the one stage would have cost savings to the city's taxpayers. To the temporary outbound location being located adjacent to Verb, there's going to be buildup of people there waiting for the J Church, and as mentioned by staff, the sidewalk is not wide enough to support large gatherings, and we cannot be ensured that that pedestrian zone will be used. Further, eliminating or reducing general vehicular traffic on Church Street will adversely impact neighborhood businesses and residents. Given the advantage of a one-stage project versus a two-stage project, we think that adequate consideration of all impacts of the project should be completed before proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ryan Clofus. I live in District 8 down at Church and 29th Streets, and before the pandemic, I rode the J maybe twice a week. Fully supportive of this plan. I think it's a great idea, and I think that the entire block of Church Street between 15th and Market should be closed to cars, not just the end part. Also in favor of the previous Safeways talk about just doing it in one phase and not having the J Church not cross Market Street ever. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hi, my name is Michaela Parnell. I'm a District 8 resident, live in Noe Valley, and a frequent user of the J prior to COVID. I just want to voice my support and echo the statements of support that many others have already made in working to make the J more efficient and activate the church corridor in a way that will benefit residents who need space to social distance and enjoy the outdoors and increase foot traffic for local business. Thanks.
Thank you.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hello, my name is Bob Gordon, and I'm a J Church rider. I support the proposal. I think it gives good consideration to some businesses for some outdoor spaces. I think that's a nice innovation to give it a try. This is an experiment. I'll understand that, but I think that it's thought out in terms of good balance. As a J Church rider, I look forward to safety in a couple of different ways. One is from good distancing from COVID-19. We don't know how long this is going to go. If we did, we might make different plans. And also just in terms of congestion and not getting run over by cars speeding through. It's been a dangerous intersection when I've made transfers across Market Street, and I think that this is an innovative proposal to eliminate private car traffic coming through, and let's give this a try for the safety of everyone. And it's not, I'm not a business owner who's thinking about an acre of cars parked in my lot like Safeway. I'm thinking about all the riders who are great customers of the neighborhood as well. Thank you.
You have 0 questions remaining.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everyone who provided public comment. At this time, I've been informed we have 1 question that was submitted via email. I will turn it over to Jonathan, to JP, if he would like to read that question into the record.
Yes, thank you, Hakem. The question that we received online is, will there be signage at Church and 17th Street to turn left onto 17th Street in order to continue north on Sanchez?
Okay, excellent. Thank you, JP. Let's go back. So at this time, what I will do is I will summarize some of the questions that I heard, and we will turn it over to the project team to answer any of the concerns that callers had or speakers had voiced during the public comment. I think if you are still with us on the line, there is a plan to, after this public comment period, to allow you to come back and ask a potential follow-up if you may have one or any in regards to the answers that the project team provides. Some of the questions that I heard, one caller had asked about the accessibility issues. They felt that the current configuration actually does not solve the accessibility issues, including the planned building of the temporary ramp. There was also a question of the safety of diners who, and as part of this new configuration, if more seating is allowed in the street or in the former parking spaces, how will the MTA prevent vehicle traffic from mixing in with that seating? One caller had asked about the outreach to property owners. He stated that he owns a property near the project and was wondering about the outreach that was conducted. Another caller had asked why buses could not be used in lieu of the J Church line, and was that maybe explored as an alternative. And the final question I had was just the overall configuration of the ramps and the waiting areas, whether or not it's feasible in terms of pedestrians or riders waiting for streetcars or transferring between the station, underground and above ground. So that's what I have. And then in addition to the question that we received via email about signage on 17th Street.
Okay, thank you, Hakem. This is Michael Rhodes again, and I will I'll speak to a few of those questions. First, I wanted to make one update about accessibility. So I know there was some question about why there's a need for a wheelchair accessible ramp on Church at Duboce. Part of the reason for that is to provide redundancy in the case that our elevator is not operational for the Church Street station. So we want to give a direct connection to the N Judah, which will be another way to get downtown. So at Church and Duboce, there would be right at that same intersection a chance to get on the N Judah without having to walk a great distance. And so that's part of why we are focusing on building that wheelchair accessible platform there in the second phase. Additionally, that southbound, the reason that we want to add that southbound wheelchair accessible platform on the west side of Church Street near Aqua Curve is to provide a way for folks to who are coming from Church Street Station. You know, because the elevator is kind of across Market Street, that's just one less street for them to cross. So you have to cross Market there, but you wouldn't have to cross Market and Church. So it provides a little bit more of a direct accessible connection there. We understand accessibility in general is a major concern with this set of temporary changes, and it's one of the things we'll be monitoring most closely, and we really want to be hearing directly from, we're going to be talking to riders, especially riders with disabilities, about how it's working, what adjustments we can make, and what we need to do to make sure that this is working as well as possible for folks. Second question, in terms of safety of diners, if people are sitting in the street, how will MTA prevent vehicle traffic from mixing in with seating? So first, wanted to share that, you know, the MTA in general right now has a program called Shared Spaces, where we're doing a combination of businesses being able to apply for seating in the parking lane. We've always had a parklet program, but this is a much faster and more nimble program on a temporary basis where the approval process is a lot faster, the requirements are a lot simpler, so folks can dine in the parking lane. And so that's already happening, and that's already happening next to moving traffic. Obviously, you know, we have standards in terms of how the design of the seating area needs to work to be protected from traffic. In this particular case, though, we're going the extra step of of creating, curb space or in the actual travel lane, turning the travel lane into outdoor dining. We've done that in Valencia. We've done that in some other locations. The main protection is that, first of all, you will have some physical barriers required, but you'll also just not, general vehicle traffic is not going to be allowed on Church Street during this time. So we are totally, scooters, mopeds, whatever, are not going to be allowed to travel on Church if outdoor dining is occurred in the curb lane. In terms of sort of how we reached out to people, I would say in general, just to be clear, the level of thoroughness and in-depthness of outreach, if this were a permanent legislation project under normal conditions, would be much more thorough. It would probably be 6-12 months of outreach if we were looking at this process under normal conditions. It is a lot faster because we do need to bring back rail service. We do need to do so in a way that doesn't bring back all of the problems in terms of crowding that happened on rail service before. So we do need to move really fast to do that, and because of that, the outreach process isn't as extensive. It's more focused on, pretty quick, trying to reach out to going door to door to all of the merchants on the corridor, putting posters on the street along Church Street, having this public hearing, and then really focusing on continuing the outreach process once implementation happens so that we can make adjustments fast. To be clear, before any permanent changes are approved, the SFMTA board would need to make a formal approval of this. So there would be a robust outreach process before any kind of permanent changes would ever be approved here. The kind of door-to-door and the mailers to property owners and all that kind of stuff would happen over a much longer period before any kind of permanent changes. But again, we unfortunately don't have as much of a luxury of doing extensive outreach because we do need to bring rail service back, and we do need to bring it back in a way that is not going to be as problematic. As far as why we're not able to operate buses on the J, it is something we thought about, because operating buses would mean that buses don't have to have wheelchair accessible ramps to provide a transfer and so forth, and they don't go into the subway, so they're not adding to the subway congestion. Unfortunately, in this case, that's not a possibility. We, as many of you probably know, Muni is operating at a fraction of our usual level of capacity right now. There are dozens of lines across the system that are not in operation because we don't have as many bus operators as we normally do. Our cleaning procedures are greatly increased, and our requirements for bus cleaning are greatly increased. So just our fleet availability is greatly diminished on the bus side. So right now we're not running any rail service, and as a result of that, we're having to use buses to run the K line, the L line, other normal rail lines, and that's taking buses and bus operators away from other lines that are completely out of service and have zero service right now. So that's why we really need to get the rail system operating. We don't kind of have the capacity to totally bus substitute the J. If we did that, that would mean that there are additional lines that we would not be able to run on the bus side. So that's the main constraint that we have right now. In terms of just the signage approaching it, we're looking at having signage kind of around 17th Street that would indicate to drivers that the Church Street northbound traffic is closed ahead. We are still evaluating exactly what those signs might say, but we want to give drivers a heads up that this is the place to turn if you're going north on Church Street, that you need to do so there. So we are definitely looking at signage, wayfinding, both for drivers, but also for transit riders around Church and Market to get from the station to the new transfer point. I know there are some other questions a little bit about the waiting areas and why they need to be where they are. One thing I'll mention is that, just to be clear, in phase 2, people would not need to walk from Duboce Avenue all the way to the Church Street station. There would still be both an inbound and outbound stop at Market Street, so it does not increase the transfer distance at all for people who would be transferring to Church Street Station when we extend it to Duboce Avenue. It just provides an additional option of transferring at Duboce to the end Judah if needed. So there'd be 2 stops instead of 1 as alternatives. And in terms of why we need to close down the street to do this, with the volume of people getting off of the J train and getting onto it, it's going to be 50 plus people getting off all at once crossing the street. So we do need to have people be able to cross Church Street, get to the Church Street station without crossing a large amount of traffic in phase 1. And likewise on the northbound direction, that curb lane next to the boarding island in phase 1, next to the Pilsner Inn and next to El Casaro, that space is really needed to provide the social distancing required to have passengers waiting there, getting on the train and off the train in phase one. So the current boarding island is only 6 or 7 feet wide, really not wide enough to have the J Church and the 22 Fillmore bus line, having a huge volume of people coming and going. So that's why you need that additional space in phase one. It is possible that in phase two, we may evaluate whether to reopen that northbound curb lane next to the Pilsner Inn and Il Casaro, because you won't have everybody getting on the train at that stop. So now that we've kind of spread the boarding across several stops, it may be possible to reopen that travel lane. That's something we'd want to be talking with merchants and residents about, especially merchants, because if they're using that for outdoor dining, there may be that consideration as well, at least part of the time of the day. So I think those are sort of some of the initial answers. If people have more detailed questions, obviously we can discuss them now, but we'd also be happy as a project team to discuss them by the phone or by email in the next week. And the city traffic engineer will ultimately make the decision on this. The decision is not happening today, so there's still some time for us to discuss those questions in depth.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. So again, as I stated earlier, there were some questions that were asked or concerns that were raised in the initial public comment period. Staff has now addressed or at least answered the questions to the best of their knowledge. I'm going to open up the line again if you had maybe a follow-up question or something else that you maybe came to your mind and you wanted to ask. Again, we're going to limit speakers to 2 minutes. And certainly if you did provide public comment the first time, you can call in, can dial 1 then 0 again to provide if you wanted to ask a follow-up question regarding the project or any answers that were provided by staff. And as Michael stated, if you feel that maybe you, as one caller stated, they wanted to provide more detailed response or wanted to have a conversation outside the meeting regarding their concerns, staff is certainly available. Michael, just to confirm, did you want people, if they wanted to reach out to the Tell Muni email address?
Yeah, best way would either to reach out, tellmuni@sfmta.com, or I don't know if Jonathan has, or JP rather, has any other points of contact, perhaps a phone number that people could call.
Okay, excellent. We'll confirm if there's a phone number to call. But again, if you did want to have a more lengthy conversation regarding the project or voice your concerns and speak directly to the project team, for now, the best way to reach out would be providing your contact information and comments through the tellmuni@sfmta.com email address. Again, that's tellmuni, TELLMUNI @sfmta.com. I will open up the line now for additional questions.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it's David Pilpel again. I just want to first confirm on the record that my written comments will be taken and included in the record. Second, I just wanted to summarize them briefly and then give you the web address where I've posted them in a file dropping site so anyone can have access to them. The first was regarding procedures, that there should be written procedures for this public hearing. I didn't include it in my comments, but for example, the 2-minute limit wasn't referred to in any materials made available before the hearing. So there should be written procedures about how these hearings work. Second, about public outreach process for this hearing should be summarized in a document and posted on the website prior to the hearing. Third, about transit. The transit rationale for this project is flawed and unfair. increased subway capacity is not needed right now due to significantly lower transit ridership at this time. And I go on about that. Health, and this is my most important point, in my opinion, forcing transit riders to transfer unnecessarily from one vehicle to another would expose them to the possibility of contacting or transmitting the COVID-19 virus. How the MTA assesses the health risks of proposed operating changes or projects has not been discussed publicly. I believe this is a significant issue that needs to be addressed and discussed thoroughly at this time. The parking and traffic changes, including vehicle access to Safeway and access impact with other vehicles, commuter shuttle buses, and emergency vehicles, hasn't been discussed. No reference was given for the environmental determination, possibly in violation of Chapter 31 of the Admin Code. And I reserve the right to provide further comments on that. And let me give you the website again where I've posted this. It's a one-page document. It's at filebin, filebin.net / and the letters are in lowercase, UPK13N3CF5SY39W6.
Okay, thank you, David.
You have 4 questions remaining.
Hello. I didn't hear an answer. Why is this being done in 2 stages? Can't the J Church terminate south of Church as proposed in the first stage for the second stage? That seems unnecessary. And third question is, has MTA confirmed whether any delivery routes to merchants and or CPMC Emergency Center will be impacted by any of these changes? Thank you.
Thank you.
You have 3 questions remaining.
This is Bob Planthold, and just again, folks got to realize I'm also a District 8 resident as well as being a senior with a disability. I want to thank about clarification on safety for dining in the street, but I also want to notice regarding outreach, I'm unaware that MTA has gone to the Mayor's Disability Council or to the Muni Multimodal Access Committee. And when you're talking about disability access and responsiveness, you're talking to merchants, you're talking to property owners, you're talking to potentially other groups, but like, we're left out, it seems. And yet you're planning an awful lot of construction for us, without us. And the anniversary of the AD mantra is not for us, without us. I think you've really missed it because other people are going to say, what's going on? Again, I oppose this project. That's all. Bye.
Thank you.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Good afternoon. This is Edward Mason. I joined late, and but my basic comments revolve around consideration of utilizing the J Church historic line to be used on the J and go on the surface to the ferry building. The question would be, do we have adequate trained operators for that? Also, it seems that the subway capacity, what analysis has there been done for the subway analysis of how many train sets? This was originally 25 years ago with Alcatel, never met the 100 train sets an hour in the subway. Documentation later says, well, we're down to 75, and now we're down in the 50 range, I think, for train sets in the subway. You're trying to put in a shuttle service in the subway to take up the slack, but why can't the J exit at Folsom Street as you had it before? You've got access in to the subway as an issue, but what is the analysis for the number of train sets in the subway that can operate effectively? I think we're trying to open up businesses and everything, and I refer back to the Stanford marshmallow on deferment of gratification and we're just digging ourselves deeper in the ground with the COVID virus. I would recommend people look up Stanford, as in university, Marshmallow, to get the full understanding of why we're in the situation we are now. I guess that concludes my comments, and I'm just totally amazed that we're even considering this now. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have one question remaining.
Hi, this is Mark Norton again. I forgot to mention before that I used to ride the J Church when it was running practically every day for the last 35 years or so. The response to my question about why you're not running buses so that people don't have to transfer, the explanation was that there aren't enough buses or drivers. That response is too laughable to even attempt to refute. But the other point I wanted to make is that it was notable that all the people who called in, the few people who supported this project, not one of them said anything about the impact of this on the disabled, on families with kids, on people who are carrying packages, on seniors, on people who are arriving late or early in the morning and having to do this transfer. Not one of them has said anything about that. I have the feeling that those who support this are the young and the able, and the rest of us are just being run over in this process by Muni. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you for your comments.
You have 0 questions remaining.
Okay, so we have no one remaining for questions. One thing is, since after opening the line for public comment, I do have the phone number you can call, the hotline for the program if you wanted to leave your contact information and get a call back from the project team. That telephone number is 415-646-2350. 415-646-2350. That's in addition to the email address tellmuni@sfmta.com. There was a question about one caller had wanted to confirm that their verbal comments to JP, whether or not they would be recorded as received and part of the meeting. I have confirmed that JP will include your comments that you give him into the record. Also, JP confirmed that he was able to download your file drop from the website that you provided. Some additional questions were regarding the health risks of the health risks of patrons transferring now and under the current system, and including the concerns with the COVID-19 virus being spread more because of this transfer. An additional question was why the changes are being proposed over 2 stages. And there was also a concern raised about did the project take into consideration the route to CPMC, if that was taken into consideration. There was a question if the Mayor's Office on Disability was conferred with in regard to this project. The next question was in regards to the operators and their training related to the proposed changes. And one caller, the last question I had was one caller asked about the analysis of the train capacity in the subway. It sounded like there was just some concern about the numbers, the accuracy of the numbers, or how we arrived at those numbers.
Okay, thank you. So the first question was about the health risk, or comment was about health risks of the transfer. So the way that this is being designed is to provide additional space for people waiting and for additional space for people getting off the train. That's really the sort of purpose of the project, is to create additional waiting space, create additional loading space, as well as the accessibility improvements. The issue is that, as folks I'm sure remember, prior to COVID-19, the J Church could be very crowded and could be extremely slow entering the tunnel, as could all Muni Metro traffic going through the tunnel. So that's the sort of major health risk that we're most concerned about avoiding. And so we will definitely be closely monitoring any sort of health risks associated with the transfer itself, but on the whole, the goal is really to reduce people being on a train indoors in a train with no windows for longer than they need to be, versus being outdoors at a transfer point where you're able to socially distance, and where it's outdoors and where you're not trapped in a confined space. I do want to note as well that one of the reasons that crowding is such a concern for us on the rail system, while ridership is going to be a lot lower for the foreseeable future, we also have a requirement of social or physical distancing on our buses and trains right now. So our capacity on our bus system is about a third of what it would normally be per bus, because we need to maintain that sort of 6 feet of social distancing or physical distancing. So with our trains, we're not just trying to avoid jam-packed trains. We're trying to avoid even somewhat crowded trains, because we do have an expectation that they're probably going to have about a third of their usual kind of safe carrying capacity. And past that point, we're going to have to pass up passengers, as bus operators have been doing. So we really have a higher bar right now in terms of how much space we need to provide. In terms of why the second stage would need to occur, again, it comes back to providing a transfer to the end Judah, which is both redundancy in case the elevator is ever not working at Church Street Station, but also because it does provide, for some people, that's going to provide an even closer transfer. The transfer between Church and Duboce, the J Church platform, and the N Judah wheelchair accessible stop is going to be shorter. You're not going to have to cross Market Street. It's a pretty seamless transfer there comparatively. So that's part of the reason for that, as well as just providing a little bit of extra connection to points north of Market Street. We do recognize that adds some travel time to the J, and that if we can keep it south of Market Street, that has some benefits in terms of getting the train turned around again. But that might be something that if this project does meet its goals and is received well once it's implemented, we could look at whether there's a way to keep the train south of Market while still providing all of the sort of accessibility that we need. But that's sort of further down the line and something we can be evaluating. The other consideration is that by going to Church and Duboce, it does allow us to potentially open that northbound lane up again next to Il Casaro and the Pilsner Inn, because we no longer have everybody waiting to get on the train at that platform in addition to getting off. So it does have some sort of traffic flow potential benefits if that becomes an issue. In terms of taking into the consideration emergency access, first of all, we reviewed all these proposals through a formal interagency coordination process. So this has been reviewed by the fire department, by the police department, by other emergency services as part of the city. In addition to that, the street will still be open for emergency vehicles. So if you're an ambulance, a fire truck, a police, other sort of emergency response vehicles, this block of Church Street will still be accessible. So that's still there. And ultimately, for private vehicles trying to get to CPMC, Church isn't really the fastest way to do it, because CPMC is over more on Noe. So that's a little bit farther west. But it's something we'll be monitoring, and it's a good important point for any of our projects that change street configurations to be closely monitoring the emergency impacts. We did, regarding the question about whether the Mayor's Office on Disability and the Muni, the Multimodal Accessory Advisory Committee for the MTA, those were both organizations that we met with and have conferred with extensively on this project, so they are both aware of that and have reviewed. So operator training is definitely something that we're working on right now. There's going to be training sessions, bulletins, and other sort of work done to make sure operators know how to work with the new configuration. In addition, there'll be an inspector posted here, so a Muni kind of supervisor who watches what's going on and helps make sure that as trains are switching back, that operators kind of know what's happening and so forth. And particularly in the first few weeks of this configuration, we expect to have a higher level of staff support out there, as well as potentially parking control officers to help guide traffic and help sort of direct people in the early days of the project. There's a question about train capacity in the subway. I showed some slides in the presentation that showed we're currently operating, scheduled to operate over 40 trains per hour, and that's much higher than most systems in the country. So the goal is really to reduce that. Certainly in terms of, we've analyzed, not just our project team, but the MTA in general has analyzed subway capacity and reliability extensively over the past 1 or 2 years. And that's something that if the person with that question had an interest in learning more about that, I'd reach out to telmuni@sfmta.com, and we can put you in touch with folks who can provide a lot more information about it. I did want to just mention too that I alluded to it earlier, but we know that this is going to be an adjustment for riders too if the train is not going to downtown, and so we're working on a pretty extensive wayfinding signage program for drivers, Muni riders, and pedestrians to help them kind of route around the area. And I believe that addresses all of the questions that were brought up.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Thank you again, Michael. So now I will turn it over to Anna, who will wrap up the presentation. We have a couple of questions, again, that I mentioned at the beginning in regard to some instant poll questions. Oh, sorry. Okay. Anna is cycling through the slides for us. So again, thank you to the project team, including Michael, for making the presentation and being available for questions. And if you still feel that you did not have an opportunity to express your concerns or ask questions again, you can do that offline after the meeting's over. The phone number to do so would be the hotline number 415-646-2350. And then the email address to provide feedback, additional feedback or questions is tellmuni@sfmta.com. So in wrapping up, we wanted to, again, as I mentioned earlier, we had some instant poll questions. If you want to type the address that's on screen now in your browser, pollev.com/SFMTA ride. That's POLLEV.com/SFMTARIDE. The second poll question is, during the project's evaluation phase, what is your preferred way to give feedback? In addition to that, you can provide, you can take this poll if you signed up at the beginning of the meeting for the first question by texting SFMTARIDE to 22333. Again, that's SFMTA RIDE or SFMTA RIDE to 22333. And the question, our second question is, what is your preferred way to give feedback on the proposed J Church transfer improvements? I will let that just sit for a few more seconds if you to give people an opportunity to provide that feedback. Okay. So seems that the preference is email. We'll move on to the next question. Again, thank you to everyone for answering. The next question is, are the project proposals clear and easy to understand? Again, you should just be able to continue with the survey if you have activated it, whether it's by text or in your web browser. So if you can please answer our third poll question. Again, if you are interested in answering the poll questions from online, that would be go to the website pollev.com /SFMTA ride or POLLEV.com/SFMTA RIDE. We're watching the results come in. This is real time. You can also take the survey if you text SFMTA ride to 22333. Again, that's SFMTA RIDE to 22333. Even as we're going on to additional questions, if you log in now, you can still answer you should be able to answer all the poll questions. The next question we have is whether or not your questions were answered today. Again, if you've already logged in and have answered our first 3 poll questions, you should be prompted to answer. You should be able to answer the 4th question now, which is, again, were your questions answered today? The poll is now active, pollev.com, SFMTA ride, or text SFMTA ride to 22333. I've been told that it's question by question. The questions are activated individually, so I apologize if as we move on, you can only answer the current question. So again, we'll just give you some more time to answer the poll questions. The current question is, were your questions answered today during this public meeting? Okay. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. I know that it's Saturday, and so that's obviously the first thing. Thank you all for joining us on the weekend to discuss the project, the proposed improvements. Also, thank you to everyone for providing public comment as well as taking our survey question. Again, if you have additional questions or comments, as I stated earlier, you can email the address that's on the screen right now, tellmuni@sfmta.com, or you can call 415-646-2109. Let me just confirm, because I know I gave out a different number the first time. Okay, so the slide now has JP's, that's JP's work number. So you would call him directly, and he said that's fine. You can dial that number if you'd like to provide additional comments. So you have 2 options, the 415-646-2109. I did give that number out earlier. You can also call the hotline number, which is 415-646-2350 if you'd like to provide additional comments or would like to speak to staff. For written comments, it would be tellmuni@sfmta.com. One last thing that we're asking everyone to do is to complete a demographic survey. This is just just to understand who it was that joined us today and get some demographics as to our guests today. The link is bit.ly/SFMTA survey. Again, bit.ly/SFMTA survey. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. I understand that the preference is to have these meetings in person. especially when there are changes being made to transit in the city. And it certainly is the MTA's preference to have these meetings in a community forum where ideas can be exchanged and questions can be asked more freely. However, again, it's the situation that we're in with the pandemic and the sheltering in place and the risk of contracting the virus. So this is the best alternative that we can provide. As you know, if you joined us last week, we are adapting, and we thank everyone for adapting with us. And we, even if you didn't, again, if you feel like you walked away today and your questions were not answered, there's still an opportunity for you to provide that feedback. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you again to all the staff that were here today and support, including IT. The time now is 12:44.